I want you to imagine for a moment that you catch your roommate eating cookies you baked for, I don't know, your sick grandma. You tell them not to eat the cookies, and then, just to be safe, you put them away in a Tupperware. Then, later that night, you go to get a glass of water, and you find your roommate in the kitchen, the Tupperware open, and they are just devouring the cookies. Wouldn't that just make you want to scream? I can feel my blood boiling just thinking about it. So, why do I bring this up? Because, unfortunately, that's pretty much the dynamic between the two leads in Monthly in the Garden with My Landlord, and it's legit getting under my skin. That being said, I also can't stop reading this series and I genuinely love it, which I know is a bit of a contradiction, but it's still true. Therefore, before we get into the rest of today's video, I want to give an obligatory spoiler warning for volumes 1 and 2 of Monthly in the Garden with My Landlord. So, in this volume, Suga and Kintano go shopping for a plant at a plant nursery. Suga ends up finding a very ugly plant that she thinks is adorable and she ends up getting. Kintano suggests the name Packy, which Suga loves. We then get a flash forward to a bit later, and Kintano has become very jealous of all the attention Suga is giving Packy, the plant. This ends in Kintano asking Suga to call her by her name, but then she gets too embarrassed and goes sort of back to being called just Landlord. Kintano then gets sick because she's always sleeping on the couch, so Suga takes care of her. But when Kintano protests a bit, Suga gets sort of like a PTSD flashback of a previous ex who used to snap at her. Kintano, however, is kind and appreciative of the affection, and Suga realizes that things are different now. However, she does seem to become a bit more reserved after this interaction, at least within the context of this particular scene. Okay, so again, as a sort of partial hater of Kintano, but not the series as a whole, I got very annoyed that this whole plot point is built off of the basis that Kintano is no longer using the attic because she's too lazy to clean it. And so, instead, she's sleeping on Suga's furniture. I get that Suga seems to not completely mind, but she does mind enough that I feel somewhat validated in absolutely hating Kintano for doing this. If you haven't been able to tell yet, she really got under my skin in this volume. It especially doesn't help that the volume ends with the acknowledgement that Suga is still paying Kintano rent, even after the whole grandma interaction/intervention scene, and it's revealed that it's not even Kintano's place, and Kintano is still using all of Suga's stuff and eating her meals and making her clean, and is also purposely doing chores incorrectly. For example, it mentions that she purposely doesn't buy things that she doesn't want, and then she just pretends to have forgotten to buy it. So I'm sorry, but I just don't really like Kintano. Anyway, moving on from that, following the sort of classic anime romance trope of one of the MCs getting sick and the other having to take care of them, Kintano reveals that she feels sort of guilty about where she left things off with her idol group, and she wants to go to see one of their performances to see if they are still doing okay, etc. In order to do this, however, they need to get tickets, and so they recruit the help of Suga's manga artist Hato. Hato explains how the ticket system works for idol concerts, and they try to get tickets via the lotto system. While they wait for the results of the lottery, Suga and Kintano go shopping for a new mug since Kintano broke one of Suga's mugs. Just saying, I kind of hate Kintano. While there, however, they talk about why they got into their different fields of employment, and it's sort of revealed that they both kind of stumbled into their careers. Later, when Suga gets sort of ambushed by a pushy salesman, Kintano helps Suga with the situation since she's more social and good at this type of stuff. Except then she kind of falls for the salesperson's tricks and Suga has to stop her from buying too much. But anyway, Hato then announces that they got tickets, but only enough for Hato and Kintano to go, so Suga has to sit this one out. Kintano shows up in disguise and watches the show with Kintano, and it goes really well. One thing I want to compliment about this part is that the art of the idols is done really well. There's a lot of dramatic contrast in the black and white art, and it makes them really stand out on the page. This is consistent with the rest of this volume, and it was significant enough that it really warranted, mentioning here. The new leader of the idol group, Ruri, recognizes Kintano because Kintano is wearing a disguise that Ruri helped her come up with. Seriously, does Kintano do this stuff on purpose? Is this like weaponized incompetency? I don't know. But anyway, she seems kind of scary at first, and I was wondering if it was going to reveal that the idol group sort of manipulated Kintano into quitting and that they were all sort of fake friends. But in the end, she's revealed to be really nice and caring, and it's just sort of an intense personality. She invites Kintano and Hato to go to karaoke with the rest of the idol group. Hato's heart basically can't handle this since it's a dream come true, so she calls in Suga for backup. While the idols talk and ask Kintano about her new life, Kintano declares that she likes Suga, and Suga responds that she likes Kintano too. And that sort of wraps up the plot for Volume 2, so now let's get into some of my other thoughts. As I mentioned earlier, the art of the idols was really good, but I really do want to highlight that the art in this entire volume is all really, really good. This is a really well-drawn manga, and it doesn't really cut any corners. As I also mentioned earlier, I really don't like Kintano as a character, but I still like the series itself. It's a very cozy and safe-feeling manga, so I find myself wanting to jump into the next volume just to continue sort of existing in its more slow and laid-back vibe. That being said, beyond my general dislike for Kintano, I'm sort of curious about where she will end up in terms of employment and sort of like life purpose. So, I don't actually enjoy like real work. For example, I don't consider this channel to be real work. So usually I like reading and watching stories where the characters get to live lives without work. Maybe they get to go live in a cozy cabin or they inherited a mansion or something like that. Kintano specifically, however, feels like she kind of needs some sort of job to stay busy. She seems kind of cooped up at the house, and she's also so lazy and helpless that it really makes me feel like she needs some sort of like structure in her life. And then she also really needs to stop charging Suga rent. But anyway, I wonder if this story is going to end with her returning to the idol life or if she will pursue a different career. And I don't know what that other career would be. Since it's a cozy, laid back slice of life, I almost feel like her getting a job would be sort of like against the general theme and mood and sort of the vibe of, again, like a laid back, slow life type of story. But again, she specifically feels like she really does need something to be doing because it almost reminds me of when you would be sick at home and maybe the first day or two it feels kind of good to be sick and you just lay on the couch and watch, TV or something like that. But after a certain point you kind of get restless. I feel like she's kind of getting restless in the same way, especially since she can't go out too much because she has the whole hidden identity thing. As for my actual review of this volume, I unfortunately didn't like this volume as much as volume 1. It was still enjoyable, well drawn, and full of humor, and the characters still felt very like alive and full of energy. So it's not like it was bad. It's just the first volume was a bit more interesting since it showed the two characters getting to meet each other, introduce each other to their families and friends, and it just kind of had that more interesting momentum of finding this house and the vicariousness of it, and oh my gosh, the roommate slash landlord is actually an idol. And this one, however, was more just sort of like the quote unquote middle of the story, and it didn't have a ton of development, and as a result it didn't have as much charm as that first one. That's not necessarily a bad thing, however, since this is part of a larger series, and some of the development with the idol group, for example, is necessary to move forward. But it's worth mentioning that I did find myself not enjoying it as much as Volume 1. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to say, so I think I can wrap things up here. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps a ton, but more importantly, it helps the community grow. I'm really looking for like-minded people who want to discuss anime and manga with me, and my dream is to sort of be able to make videos like this and then interact with you guys in the comments and actually, have like a meaningful conversation about what we're reading and watching. So yeah, if you've read this volume, please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Really curious if you don't like Kintano as much as me. I don't know if I'm kind of doing a hot take here or if this is sort of, the consensus of the fan base. But I do ask that you just don't include spoilers for the future volumes since we're sort of doing this on an episodic basis. But yeah, with that being said, take care and I will see you in the next one.